냠지 진보도도 유미종 또는 진보가 자다 다그러 다른 전도 실문도 또만 제자라기 숑살.
To liberate sentient beings, please generate the supreme bodhicitta before we start today's teaching.
Tene wangdang dambe Tene wangdang dambe jerwa tong ni gya po te dang da nyam da sem de ka te dag jak jam jang den de nyang tu chen bo jan tag la der ter long tam ba te jang de te jang ba dag chag su sur long ta na ngum sir ma ta shong ra nya jer nya mo te ne jang den de ji nyang tu chen bo te da ka sem ji number to ba ti ji ti se che de ne ce dang dam ba wo chung chen bo la ka sar ba wo chung wang dang dam ber jerwa tong ni gya po kang ta tar damgun samda kero anda to tamche ti wo do long to no wo chung te nyang tu jin bo te to ge long ge ya na xia chu chu ja tong chu 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 sa ni ji paror de yam chi paror de te jang sha ba zhe chen ba yang to ber zo ba san ji ru ba da ja zhe dam ba de wo sha ban ji tin ji Steven der wa kalo ji ra la na me ba la da man nam ji to ba san ji jong den de gen de na wa ji xia wan ji ten de jong de wo chung de nam de ba te vision shaba nga jam jong ren ju ta ba te vision shaba nga jam jong ren ju nyang tu chen bo nga je po te tham chi chi ko go de chi gu la na me pa yang to bor zo ba shan chip dum ngom ber zo ber san ja te tham chi kin da no a ji sha ju ro ndar ta te ga ya go chong da chalong go chong da stan ji go chong da na bo da char ka na bo da Mangak badang nam zhi dang gap na dang ge long no bu dang charka na bu dang vaka la dang rap chum vaka la skir she dang la gong la sok ba wang dang dang ber jer war ngab ge po de ne jong den de ti tsig zib ja ban de do ga zar do go zhi ya ri ngai nyang tun de ma wo ti ji ka ram ta yi na de jong sha ban ji tin gun den jer zhu zhu she war tong zhen nan ba gun ma wo ti jim ta yi ka ra na san ji man bom ta yim tong ni na gun de na ji shi jer de yi jang yang yong su ta ber jer san ji to na go zhong dan ber Jere chukchu to the giant number of jog chukchu share tong den ji te jan chu dam bam cho jang tong bran jere te ne jan chu so ba na mo jer me kang chu dum ngong nu ju ne te ne te na ne jang ji se number 7 nam da nam da chim tak da lem bi cer kang ne so te yi chu to ne jan da ne te tak da yi 대덕 상지 동납 시험스런 주 대덕 대덕라는 제처럼 출시 대가 지금 남는 남버 렘바이 장들 대덕 시리양 용어는 게르 랍더 나지실 메요소 쇼비돔나 테르 텐데른 게르 대정서바테 이츠 잔게르와 게르 동쪽지 창어른 게르 교바 용좀 냥한 데네나 대랭인 게르 담주 테르네 게르 대요즈님 종어른 게르네나 대이섬지르 대여트 슬라고 교바데 담주 메게르네 라남다나마도 등 Jere kimchu kunder na ajisha vara manjibai jera juana jembar nga ge yongsun sang te da chigi go da chimjong jera te da kenjip ko bandan da te zamjur to no te jin san ge ndi ba te jin tam chu te nda te tam bi jone va yam nyam bar jera kunder na war ti da ba ye jer nga yi nga no shaba jin te te janal ha jin ji ten da tam chu te da ta war jerwa yen jer ter jerten jiten tam chu ngeftan ba jer tam jin jiten ngeftan Jerter tamcheng eltan ba dan ngai godom joji tarji ter te da chigne ja bhanjam se long da tambaran jero ogong ji ter wang dan ba nga jalen manyo da da ta ai nyan to jan yang te tar zon te jin da nyan to jan la go te ne da chong nga ja te da po te da jon de live dagchig lana me bayan da burzo ba shan jab dum gumbra ngonzam da long tam ba tu ne chimjam go ye rang de ga ye do de war chen cham dan de kala war de ran don ne cham dan de ji jalam go sham ta den de ki chi zor do cham dan de dagchig ta da jim me chabran da no dagchig nyan len da lag de dagchig na yong sam nyan len de so nyan sim la yong so gomba non ba de dagchig ki shag so cham dan de na dagchig ma to ba manzara munge parlate ti jelata jenandarta te doctor te jan shoba ishi tim gumbru jan jebi dira ujiwa lagana darta ishi chungi cha charlo nyamo darta khwerna malala jin zo chum jibru jan malala ya za wom chi bi chi chang de chi ne de de kum mamgam chi nyarwa amza wo ti ndi noru rumbochi ndo shawo ji rentam chiba noru rumbochi te de gujim tarm gero chundan de na matim chi lang de phagane yirub shu jandam chi de na nyumon bar jerne cham sarma da ratban survi hlat shinda nyumon shan chem batte jine kaze jonzur ni ne de dalam ge terap da ga kirdo chundan de ne matim zawur nya ti gujim tamar rentam mamchi bi noru rumbochi prma kiba mati yang thong ne delandir kitchi ke ma kyoda ze dang kum sorwi shirda chirte nyomonzo gong ji ke ma kyoda devra ne bra shayu shirda ngen do batam chirda bra sheba riname bi noru rimbochi kujim tamar parde ke ma kyoda ngen noru rimbochi vijinne ke ma kyoda ki kum tama noru rimbochi rindame para parna dagla nam parawa sajika para chi ji shir para ke ma kyo chongzi kyang martawa kima kyo di shibi rangzhin chande kima kyo nyumung bar zedang kuntsura zamgi chobran zantam kima kyo do songla ranchin mebi noru rinpoche ndardara kerde zhongjir rinpoche songne noru dedang noru jibshawa damchit shushik jimchi ba de zhinda chondan de dakchak jang de zhang shokbe tokmaram zhong zhang shusam jibshoba shona tamchim jimba niki sim kibir jirwa de dakchak kiyo mar tokbar sarde chondan de ti la dakchak jang chombe nyang len de bar nyam da gyodo chondan de dakchak nyomong bar sor jang chondan de ndar tawi ishi kongda chebar mzado tamchim jimba ishi zurmon bar takdam 마님 장티 정던데 덕적대 정서베 콩도 제버 담바 게론도 교던더트는 렌데 버 마셈 제 게론도니 교도 용점냥을 자위셔도 기비스다 데도 케지semla 요도 주샤다 장 조베 교도 다르터 음닝을 다와 임버 셈바데 아이 탈람 케바고지 데들 정던데 덕적 콩도 제버 기바데 라나메 바양도 버조버션 접도 롱톤도 데니건 시고도 야나 라속바 광단담버제라 Rngab jumbo, rngab ja bote da ge di cigzib jaban da da sordo, kangshin chodo rabshan, shancho longtan de ndi wum jin la na me ban da to ne no da ja gam ga de jun da yi kyan la jam zra lo, jirtir shi ba mum ke man zra jin de ro sha bi tam ba da ja na nyan de ba zam ki 차르 전남바 농바데도 킬라랍다 저 페르나만가 라라 지데 임자고 팀들 첨버려 주보데도 논 시보나 되는 데라자 자네나 제기데 한테도 첨버런 저 런전도 마르라 르와데 자르데 데일라마 데일라고 타마르 퍼네도 데랍자네 데이가 저르시바데 한테님 시버어 저르나네데 중지로 잔도 지데는 요모지르데 봉장 서로 용선 서로 신도 교 가제데 자르 닝은 데브라 저르데나 가제 제치 Masimajang te irin boche yang majan jero lagula na perma tamam chi te na drogbo nga ma te tone dagzig chimda rinchim shimba te la shinda yongsu chu gyad ne rinchim kujim tanam chi bar tana te im tone de chogdang da rinchim de im tana tenja te norum amzo to janda te ne gerando be yo nda nga dang shinda dana te chim chon dana da jandar ta bar ngonji chudba shinda yirang la shinda yirang ne devjin shig ba ni ji namji dosir de ngongir molum de manzara jonde de dogjo shibi lo dogjo dekshig tamba manzara dogjo nyan de ba zamsara de la ma mare matsur masim so ndim nyan de ba yodme de jin jikte no ningi dogjo sarvar de nyan de ba kamjim chogdo de tiyo dambar namji yishim chogon der sanji jechin namji nammanji la namebi longtan raptu ni gombochig lachji longton ba ye dagchag gajam gor ranwa ke tambi chupa makar bole gerlon ngabja longtan bi leg te leg jibsha te gya pa wo Well.
Now let us continue with the Lotus Sutra. Previously, we covered a portion of the chapter on prophecies. Today, we'll continue with this teaching. Before we begin, let me share something about the merit of this Lotus Sutra. Practicing, copying, and reciting the Lotus Sutra brings truly immeasurable merit. There was a Chinese bhiksun who devoted her entire life to practicing the Lotus Sutra. Apart from the Lotus Sutra, she didn't even read a single verse from other sutras. She didn't practice any mantras either. Just like some of our Buddhist practitioners today, she practiced this one dharma exclusively. When she passed away, she appeared in dreams to some of her disciples, telling them she had been reborn in the upper grade. You know, there are 9 grades of rebirth. We don't need to list them all here. She was reborn in the middle level of the upper grade. This was because she only recited the sutra without fully understanding its meaning. But if she had completely understood the meaning, she would have easily achieved rebirth in the highest level of the upper grade. So for those of us who wish to be reborn in the Pure Land, some practitioners of the Pure Land teachings might think, I'm practicing Pure Land Dharma Gate, so is practicing the Lotus Sutra useful for me? If you think this way, actually it's extremely beneficial. Practicing the Lotus Sutra alone can also lead to rebirth in the Pure Land. So I think many of us should create a connection with this teaching if we wish to be reborn in Sukhavat in this lifetime. I believe the same is true for those of us studying Vajrayana. This creates an especially wonderful connection for rebirth in Sukhavat. When I was teaching the Diamond Sutra about 10 or 20 years ago, I often used extensive scriptural evidence and reasoning along with various explanations to bring Pure Land and Vajrayana teachings together in harmony. I spent a great deal of time on this, including searching through various commentaries, but nowadays the atmosphere is much better. Within Chinese Buddhism, there are very, very few people who have negative views about Tibetan Buddhism, especially Vajrayana. Similarly, we Tibetan Buddhist practitioners have no rejection of Pure Land teachings or other schools like Chan and Vinaya. Tibetan Buddhism, by its very nature, is quite inclusive and comprehensive in a certain sense. So as Buddhist practitioners within our own sphere of practice, we shouldn't have too many divisions among ourselves. These kinds of divisions shouldn't exist among Mahayana Buddhist practitioners. We Mahayana practitioners should regard all sentient beings as our own family members and benefit them accordingly. How much more so when it comes to the different schools handed down by Shakyamuni Buddha himself. To reject or criticize one another is truly quite ridiculous. Even now, there are still a very small number of people who don't understand the teachings of other schools. I even think that when it comes to other religions, before you fully understand another religion's teachings, you shouldn't criticize it. When I first came to the Buddhist academy, whether I was teaching Buddhist logic or Madhyamaka, I only praised the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. Regarding other traditions, I still had some bias. But later, because I traveled to many places and met many people from other religions and also participated in activities of other faiths, I truly came to realize that every religion has its own unique value and significance. So we can't, just because we're Buddhists, say, aside from my own school, I can't accept anything else. Or because I study Tibetan Buddhism, apart from Tibetan Buddhism, I don't accept any other masters, nor do I accept any other texts. This attitude is truly not good. Nowadays, within Chinese Buddhism, there are quite a few young people who, whether toward other religions or towards studying Tibetan Buddhism, have a very good attitude in these respects. We've also met many Theravada masters, and these Theravada masters are now also dedicating themselves to studying the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism and other schools. So I think during our lifetime, we should not create the transgression of abandoning the Dharma. Otherwise, this becomes the greatest obstacle to rebirth in Sukhavat. We also shouldn't criticize other schools or other great masters and teachers. Even toward monastics without fame or lay practitioners, it's best that we don't create negative speech. As Buddhist practitioners, we should always be different from those who don't study the Dharma. In what way are we different? Because when you practice a religion, that religion contains many profound methods for taming our afflictions. If our greed, anger, and delusion, our jealousy, our pride, and all these afflictions are even worse than those of ordinary people, then perhaps Mahayana Buddhism doesn't really have methods and instructions for taming afflictions after all. As Buddhist practitioners, we should think carefully about this. Now let us continue with our teaching. Previously, it was Venerable Purna who already received his prophecy. Now there were 1,200 arhats who were thinking the same thing. At that time, among the Hinayana bhiksus, Venerable Purna. You can sit down now, the one with joined palms. Now these 1,200 arhats were thinking in their hearts, we are so joyful. This joy is unprecedented. Why is this? Because Venerable Purna, as a representative figure among the Hinayana practitioners, had already received the Buddha's prophecy. You will attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi in the future. If the Bhagavan were to give prophecies to other disciples as well, how wonderful that would be. There were quite a few of them here, not just Venerable Purna, but other arhats one by one. If the Buddha personally gave prophecies, how joyful that would be. We can see from this that these practitioners had no jealousy. If we were jealous people, we'd think, he already got his prophecy, why didn't I get mine? I practice even more diligently than him. My wisdom surpasses his. Sometimes we humans tend to compare ourselves in favorable ways, because nowadays many people are constantly comparing. He has a car. Why does he have such a nice car? Why don't I have one? He bought a house. Why don't I have one? So they create suffering for themselves in this way. Sometimes we even compare merit and virtue. Sometimes within our own group, why has he already obtained that degree? Why haven't I received a degree? Every time we select Khenpos and Khenmos, we not only observe their studies and achievements, but also have to be very mindful of whether someone might become unhappy. Including in our study groups during the annual selection process for coordinators, we have to consider many things. If we select this way, some people really want to be coordinators because they have a strong altruistic intention. Some people have no altruistic intention, only self-interest. Some people really don't want to be coordinators and keep their heads down. Whenever there's an opportunity to serve, their head is nowhere to be seen, always like this. After the meeting ends, then their head comes up. It's usually like this. So among us humans, there are all kinds of people. In such situations, when someone praises just one person among them, look, among these 1,200 people, Venerable Purna has already received his prophecy. When the others didn't receive theirs, actually, all these other venerables were thinking, he's already received his prophecy. If he received his prophecy, then we also have hope. So in this regard, their mindset was somewhat different from that of ordinary people. For ordinary people, many would probably become unhappy thinking, because he already got his prophecy, many people would say, why didn't I get my prophecy? I'll never talk to him again. Clearly we were together in the same class. He's already received his prophecy, so why haven't I received mine? If I receive it 2 or 3 days later, I won't be polite about it. I'll be upset. They might think this way. The Buddha knew the minds of these arhats, so he told Mahakashyapa. When the Buddha spoke to these 1,200 bhiksus, he actually also told the person in charge, Mahakashyapa. He was like their manager. Otherwise, for more than 1,200 people, if the Buddha spoke to each one individually, or if in one gathering he said, I'm going to give you all prophecies, he didn't say it that way. He had a representative convey the message. So sometimes does Buddhism have leaders? Are there coordinators? Yes, there are. Because at that time, Venerable Kashyapa was among all of these disciples. The Buddha knew that everyone's hearts were very joyful. They still had one more wish. The others also wanted to receive prophecies. At that time, the Buddha was not like us. We don't know anything until the very end. And only then do we realize, oh, so at that time they were unhappy. Oh, so at that time they were very happy. So at that time, because our gatherings are quite complex, so sometimes in any gathering I pay great attention to people's expressions, including our volunteers. When I look at them, I can see that from their expressions I should be able to discern some people's motivations. Usually I often praise our teachers and volunteers. A while ago I harshly criticized those volunteers, whether you call it severe criticism or a strong reprimand. I spoke to them at length. After that meeting ended, a school principal said to me, "You went too far today." Then I asked another person, "Did I go too far?" He said, "No, you should have said it. You needed to say it. Today you were too gentle. You should have been even stricter." So everyone has different opinions, but I felt it was just right, not too much, because I observed some people's expressions, including some volunteers. At the beginning, they had such enthusiasm and joyful hearts. When I came to the meeting, basically throughout the entire meeting, say for 2 hours, they wouldn't even blink, just watching like this the whole time in the beginning. But then toward the end, during my 2-hour meeting, they wouldn't look even once. This really happens. I'm not lying to you. There are so many people here today. So why did I just talk about not forgetting our initial intention? Sometimes volunteers really are like this. Then when I look, I can see it all. Why such suffering? Why such unhappiness? Well, I also have my own mindset about this. So sometimes with us humans, whether it's serving or anything else, learning is the same, studying is the same, keeping precepts is the same. At the beginning, many people are extremely, extremely enthusiastic. So nowadays, when I go to different places, some people are so moved, crying uncontrollably, tears streaming down like a torrential downpour. At that time, I also think, today they're crying so hard, but I wonder if after 5 more years, they might start making things up and criticizing me. Who knows? I still have some doubts about people nowadays, because right before my eyes, many people's stories have played out quite often. After this, among us Buddhist practitioners, if there are this many issues among Buddhists, then non-Buddhists and other worldly people probably have them too. Some people might think, Buddhists are so complicated. I won't study Buddhism then. Buddhists are so complicated. Actually, it's not just Buddhists. We humans, no matter where we go, are like this. Among Christians too, and among Muslims as well. I've learned about this. When I meet them and interact with them, I ask, how are your volunteers? What's the attitude toward learning on your side? They have many of the same issues. Gendon Chöfel also used to go to churches of other religions and pray intensely. In the end, his tears wouldn't stop flowing in front of statues of other religions. He would pray intensely like this. Actually, Gendon Chöpel was quite an interesting person sometimes. Then he said, sometimes our own minds are truly unreliable. So I think sometimes when you all first start out, you're especially, I just mentioned this, among our volunteers. At the beginning, for example, when you meet a teacher, you can't bear to look away, thinking, today it's just like seeing the Buddha, truly like Padmasambhava, with no difference at all. I'll stay right here with him. Even if I sit for 5 hours, my body doesn't need to move. My eyes don't need to blink, just like this the whole time. So devoted, with palms joined the entire time. Look, someone just now has been right here for about half an hour, continuously like this. So at the beginning, there are many like this. But whether it will be like this in the end is hard to say. Many worldly relationships are also like this, aren't they? At the beginning, extremely, extremely passionate, but in the end, what does it become? Everyone knows very well. So sometimes the human mind is unreliable. Good minds are unreliable, and bad minds are also unreliable. Some people are especially bad at first. When you see them, they look like they're filled with hatred. But gradually, this person improves. There are cases like this too. Today, I'm still teaching the Lotus Sutra. Now the Arhats are speaking. This is still a lesson from an elder for you all. Many young people say, how could that be? That's not possible. That's too exaggerated. Absolutely impossible. But sometimes it's not necessarily an exaggeration. The Buddha told Venerable Kashyapa, these 1200 Arhats, I will give prophecies to you all of attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, not all at once, but in sequence. Among them, he here represents all 1200 disciples. Venerable Purna already received his prophecy earlier. Now, among these great disciples is Venerable Ajñata Kaundinya. As for Ajñata Kaundinya, when Shakyamuni Buddha first turned the Dharma wheel at the deer park in India, he was the eldest bhikkhu among them. When he made aspirations in the past, at that time the Buddha was a Pratyekabuddha or something like that, and he made offerings to him, aspiring, in the future, may I become the eldest and most senior disciple. He made this aspiration. For this reason, among the 5 bhikshus at that time, he was the most senior in age, and his conduct was extremely proper and disciplined. Such was this venerable one. In the future, Bhiksu Ajñata Kaundinya will make offerings before 6,200 million Buddhas, and then he will attain Buddhahood. His Buddha name will be Universal Brightness Tathagata. He will possess the 10 titles of a Buddha, worthy of offerings, perfectly enlightened one, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well gone, knower of the world, unsurpassed, tamer of beings, teacher of gods and humans, Buddha, Bhagavan. He will possess all 10 titles of a Buddha and will be endowed with these 10 qualities, universal brightness Tathagata. There are also 500 Arhats. Here, he also mentions some of them as representatives. For example, Uruvilva Kashyapa. There are 3 Kashyapas. We've encountered them before. It seems this one was the royal preceptor of King Bimbisara. I think we discussed the story of the 3 Kashyapas the other day. There's also Gaya Kashyapa and Nadi Kashyapa, and then Kalodain. Kalodain was among the group of 6 bhikshus. There was one called the Black Light Bhikshu. That should be him. Kalodain is particularly prominent in the Vinaya and also in the Agama Sutras. He's quite representative. When he was young, he was extremely mischievous, and his attachment was very strong. Many of the precepts in the Vinaya related to attachment were established because of him. Among the group of 6 bhikshus, everywhere you look, every time there was a violation of precepts, it was him. In Tibetan, we call this chaga. We often use this term to refer to some managers or people who are disobedient. We use this as an analogy, but when he reached 70 years old, his behavior became extremely gentle and tamed. In the end, he became foremost in teaching and transformation. In guiding and teaching sentient beings, he was foremost in exhortation. Later on, he became particularly remarkable because before he became a monastic, he was also quite a mischievous person. After ordaining, he didn't keep the precepts well either. When he was young, he violated many precepts. Many of the rules were established because of him. In this way, he was probably familiar with many aspects of worldly life in particular. Later, he tamed more than 1,000 households. In the end, he was truly remarkable. So sometimes, I often say this too, among us here, we cannot look down on anyone. Some of our Dharma teachers particularly favor people with talent, who also have good appearances, who have plenty of money and so forth. Moreover, some particularly like, even in governments of various countries nowadays, people are like this. Some people are very honest themselves, but they don't know how to flatter Dharma teachers or build relationships with superiors. These kinds of people often end up with no future prospects among worldly people because they don't want to build relationships with anyone and find others annoying. But if their studies and work below are very diligent, especially in certain environments, they can't advance. But we Buddhist practitioners shouldn't be like this. But that's also hard to say. Sometimes among our Buddhist and lay practitioner community, communities, worldly methods come into our Buddhist groups. With some individuals, whoever becomes the coordinator, oh, you've now become the head coordinator of our group. So they get on better terms with that person. Next time, when it becomes someone else, then they develop a better relationship with that one. Actually, this is necessary in one sense, but on the other hand, as coordinators, Dharma teachers and instructors, we should not look down on anyone. Some people at the beginning are like Kalodayan among the group of 6 bhiksus, so mischievous when young, extremely difficult to tame. In the Sangha, they were nearly expelled completely, but later in old age, around 70 years old, the conditions for him to guide sentient beings had all ripened. In our Dzogchen tradition, there's someone called Gyalwa Yangtun. Gyalwa Yangtun also, in his later years, saw many conditions for guiding beings ripen. In the Buddhist history of our Jetsun Nyingtik Great Perfection, there are stories about him. When he was young, he seemed to have no prospects at all. Also in Chinese Buddhism, there are many great masters, including in the past, like Master Nenghai and Master Qingding. When they were young, some were soldiers, some were hunters, engaged in many such activities. But in their later years, the conditions for benefiting beings ripened especially well. The treatise on the modes of a ruler also teaches that we cannot look down on anyone around us. Some seeds, for the time being, when conditions haven't ripened, may not be apparent. Of course, those with particularly keen insight or remarkable great masters may be able to recognize this, just like our root guru's teacher. At that time, our root guru was so mischievous. Look, in his 20s, he was so mischievous. But his teacher, Thoga Rinpoche, must have recognized his future attainments. He paid him particular attention, holding him in very, very high regard among the group. This is an analogy I hope that Dharma teachers in the process of training talents should pay attention to everyone. Sometimes people you never expected might harm you, and unexpectedly the worst person in your group may directly surpass many others in the end. By the end, it's like when we're racing. When racing at the most critical moment, some Spanish runners, some African runners just zoom ahead. Many people are quite surprised. At the very end, some look back while others don't look back at all. They just run forward and cross the finish line. So on the racetrack of life, there will be situations like this too. Some who seem very promising at first end up last, in second to last place. This happens too. So on the racetrack of our lives, we can sometimes see this clearly. What seems true at the beginning may not necessarily be so. Even those who are especially diligent, whose studies are particularly good in the middle when they encounter various conditions, they may not make it. This happens, so this is an analogy for spiritual practice as well. There's also Udayin and Aniruddha, Revata, Kafina, Bakula, Kunda, Sagata, and others. As for Sagata and Kudapantaka, the lesser Pantaka, we've often taught about these before. They all received prophecies. As for the lesser Pantaka, he was so dull, even after repeating a single phrase to him many times, he couldn't even repeat it back. Originally, when our Buddhist academy first started at the very beginning, there were several Chinese people, probably 6 or 7. Among them was one named Ju Hua. At that time, I was teaching them the Tibetan alphabet, Ka, Ka, Ga. Back then, there weren't many teachings. I wasn't very good at teaching either. There was one called Ju Hua. I would recite Ka, Ka, Ga to them, and he would just sit there below. Whether others were reciting or not, throughout the entire class, Kakaga, I'd say, did you hear? He'd still just go, Kakaga. Extremely, extremely dull. Over all these years, he left the deepest impression on me, an extremely dull person. But I don't know if he has achieved realization now. Even people like this will attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. All these Buddha's names are universal brightness Tathagata. The Buddha summarized all this content that was explained before in a brief verse format to explain it. At this time, the Buddha told Bhiksu Ajata Kandinya, in the future, you will see countless Buddhas, and after incalculable eons have passed, you will attain the fruition of a Tathagata, a perfectly enlightened one. You will constantly emit great light before sentient beings, possessing the 5 eyes, 6 super knowledges, and miraculous powers to guide beings. Your renown will spread throughout the 10 directions, and all sentient beings will respect and rejoice in you. You will constantly teach the unsurpassed path of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, or teach the unsurpassed path of the great Mahayana Dharma, because you will turn the unsurpassed Dharma wheel, dispelling the darkness in the minds of countless beings. For this reason, your Buddha name will also be Universal Brightness Tathagata. That pure land will be extremely pure. All the bodhisattvas there will be very courageous. Originally, bodhisattva means courageous mind, brave awareness, with very strong mental power. We who have aroused bodhicitta shouldn't be afraid at the slightest difficulty or fearful at every little thing. Nowadays, there's something called a phobia of fear. This is not good. Many people have no sense of security. Actually, I think that living in this world, we shouldn't have fear. There's really nothing to fear. Even if the sky falls, it's nothing. The sky won't crush anyone to death anyway. If the earth splits open, that's also nothing. People should cultivate themselves over the long term. Of course, if we're like bodhisattvas, with our minds filled only with sentient beings, without any self-centered thoughts, we probably won't be afraid. Otherwise, we're always worried. Will I lose a certain person? Will I have no money in the future? Will I get sick? Will my practice be unsuccessful? Will I not wake up tomorrow morning? And so on. Many of our Dharma friends here are generally doing quite well in the mornings, most people. But some people, because classes start quite early, seem to have no energy during the day. I'll observe for a while longer and see. Right now, the energy level is still quite good. Not as intense as before, but it's still acceptable, right? As for bodhisattvas being courageous, bodhisattvas won't fear things that ordinary worldly people especially fear. Indeed, in our minds through practice, we truly have many different experiences. Actually, I think many things in this world don't need to be constantly worried about. Many people nowadays truly lack a sense of security, no matter what their status is. During the day, they're so worried they can't even eat, and at night, they can't sleep. In the end, their health deteriorates, and their mood worsens. People could obviously live very healthily, but for some individuals, things that aren't very significant end up bringing them tremendous suffering. That pure land is not like our world. In our world now, probably impermanence comes quite quickly in life, in work, in relationships, including in our studies. Sometimes things decline very dramatically, so there's no sense of security. In our modern era, this is probably different from previous eras. These bodhisattvas often ride in magnificent palaces. The other day we mentioned that Brahma and others also sit in crystal chambers when coming before the Buddha. Our glass houses here aren't easy to move. One move and they shatter. These courageous bodhisattvas often ride in such palaces, traveling throughout the pure lands in all 10 directions. Before various Buddhas, they make unsurpassed offerings of flowers and various other things. Then, in their presence, in the Tibetan text it says, they travel to various places to uphold pure precepts and listen to the Dharma, just as it says in the aspiration of Sukhavati, through a single thought, they travel to different pure lands to hear teachings. Here, listening to Dharma teachings is truly wonderful now. I think the internet is extremely good. I'm very grateful for it. In the past, we were in a small place. I taught at the academy for over 20 years. For more than 20 years, there was no internet. Then for the last 10 years or so, out of my 30 plus years of teaching, these last 10 years have been the most successful because of the internet. So many people don't need to travel somewhere with great hardship. Basically, diligent practitioners can listen every time. In the past, whether people went to Tibetan area or to India or to various places in Han region, crossing mountains and rivers with such suffering, by the time they arrived, half a year had passed or many years had gone by. But now, we don't need to go in person. Perhaps in the future, Pure Lands may also have internet connections. No need to go there, just listen to teachings directly, because when they go, these bodhisattvas don't like tourism either, nor do they like buying luxury goods. Nowadays, many Chinese people travel to various countries to buy luxury items or go to Korea for cosmetic surgery. Bodhisattvas don't need these things either. So if it's for hearing teachings or receiving precepts, perhaps the Buddha could use miraculous powers or go online to give them teachings this way, I'm joking, we can't say this. Otherwise, many people might start debating with me. Who knows? After making such offerings, they're very joyful because they've seen so many Buddhas. They're very joyful in their hearts. Their joy generally comes from receiving the Dharma. These bodhisattvas in general are not like us worldly people who cling to worldly contaminated possessions. All these things are impermanent. When impermanence occurs, suffering also arises. In an instant, in a single moment, they also return to their own land, possessing such miraculous powers. These miraculous powers, nowadays indeed, the internet is a particularly wonderful kind of miraculous power. Currently, the internet transmits only 2 of the 5 objects: form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Just 2. One is sound and one is video, audio and video. These 2 can be transmitted. In the future, the other 3 may also become possible. Many companies are now researching this. Many companies are also planning that in the future, for example, when buying something through the internet or a mobile phone, you should be able to touch and feel other things. But this still presents certain difficulties. According to the Abhidharma Kosha, it's not that easy. However, symbolically, they may achieve part of it. 50 years ago, 20 years ago, if we said we could see a person on video or hear someone's voice via audio at the same time, when we first saw a fax machine, it was so rare and precious. The first time I went to America, I wondered, with such a vast ocean in between, how could this sound be transmitted? Later, at an American center, at that time, fax machines were very rare in China. They brought out the fax machine and I kept looking at it. I definitely couldn't figure it out. There was no way. I wondered how this could work with an ocean separating us. How could it be like this? I had such thoughts, but now many things we can't imagine. As I mentioned the other day, in the future, things beyond human control may also appear. At that time, perhaps, there may be some Buddhist traditions, but if Buddhist practitioners haven't studied well and haven't prepared well in all these areas, it's quite possible that in such waves of change, our old methods might become obsolete. What we're doing well now is this. Buddhist practitioners understand that among our current online and relatively advanced technologies, among Buddhist talents, there are people who can operate them. This is very good. If we didn't have any of this and we only had our traditional methods, we might no longer be able to continue the transmission in this world. So I also hope that in the future we Buddhist practitioners will preserve the Buddha's wonderful wisdom. May it not be lost or diminished in the hands of our generation after generation. That would be truly regrettable. People of every era should work even harder and adapt to their times. Whatever instruments are used in this era, Buddhism can likewise utilize them in these areas. I think this is very good. In 2006, I was thinking that I was also worried, would many people criticize me? In China at that time, there were very few who were live streaming via internet and video like this. But later, we were still, in a certain sense, through the protection of Dharma protectors and the dedication and efforts of all the Dharma friends, we should say that over these past several years, in a certain sense, there has been breakthrough progress. I also hope that many of you who understand these technologies won't think this is just trivial work. It's one of the 3 types of laziness. Why should I be online all the time? Better to turn off all my phones and computers and just recite Om Mani Padme Hum. That's also very good. For individuals, the merit of mantras is very great. But for Buddhism as a whole, especially if you previously specialized in these areas, applying your previous knowledge in these ways is very meaningful, I think. This is also a kind of miraculous power. We should also rejoice in this. Now that Buddha's lifespan is 60,000 eons, the true Dharma will abide for twice that, 120,000 eons. The period of the semblance Dharma, if we multiply 120,000 by 2, that's 240,000. But in Tibetan, it seems to say 3 times, which would be 180,000. Later, when this Dharma perishes, the gods and humans will be especially sorrowful. As for the 500 bhiksus, because the universal brightness Buddha mentioned earlier, who is the present venerable Ajñata Kaundinya, after his parinirvana, after the Dharma has perished in this way, afterward, 500 bhiksus will successively become Buddhas. All Their Buddha names will be universal brightness, Tathagata. They will all successively receive prophecies. After one Tathagata passes away, it's the same. He will give the prophecy to the next one. The way he gives prophecies at that time is, after my parinirvana, a certain Tathagata will appear. For example, before Ajñata Kaundiñña's parinirvana, he will give a prophecy for the next Buddha. Then when that Buddha approaches parinirvana, he will give a prophecy for the next Buddha. The worlds they teach will be just like mine. He will also say this. His pure land will be adorned as well as his miraculous powers, including bodhisattvas and Śrāvakas, the duration of the true Dharma and semblance Dharma, as well as the Buddha's lifespan, the name of the eon, how many eons, and so forth. All of these will be prophesied one by one. The Buddha gave prophecies only to these two venerables, but the entire method of giving prophecies has already been explained below. Venerable Kashyapa, you should know that these 500 self-mastered arhats will actually be given prophecies in this way. As for the remaining Śrāvakas, since the 500 arhats have already received prophecies, there are still 700 more arhats, altogether 1,200. These will be the same. Just like the 500 arhats, they will each receive prophecies in the future. Those arhats who are not present today, you should also tell them, because today many of them didn't attend, so 700 didn't come. Is it that 700 didn't come? At the beginning it said there were 1,200, perhaps some individuals, because there were also arhats who weren't feeling well, sick leave. Some were listening to the class at home, eating something at home while looking at other things. Now they're a bit more focused, not eating anymore. That's acceptable. After the 500 arhats just mentioned received prophecies before the Buddha, they were very joyful. They also arose from their seats and made prostrations before the Buddha. Afterward, they blamed themselves in a spirit of confession, saying, Bhagavan, we always thought this way. In the past, we ourselves thought we had already attained the ultimate nirvana. As mentioned before, many arhats thought they had already attained nirvana. But now we know, after you have spoken thus, we seem to be people of especially little wisdom. This is not good at all. Why? Because we will attain the wisdom of the Tathagata in the future. Yet we thought we should still obtain the wisdom of the Tathagata. But we don't know what the reason was, whether it was due to circumstances or something else. We thought our small wisdom was already sufficient. Looking back now, we're so ashamed. Including some individuals among us here perhaps in the past regarding Mahayana Buddhism, they didn't study systematically. For this reason, they thought that studying Buddhism, reciting Buddha's name, and doing a little good in daily life would be enough. Later, when they truly studied texts like the Bodhisattva's way of life or some other Mahayana teachings, including the Mahayana Sutra Lamkara we're teaching this time, after studying the Mahayana Sutra Lamkara, many people's mindsets have truly changed. Although its theoretical content is quite strong, not as simple as the Guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life and rather difficult to memorize, still, some people with wisdom feel that after studying it, they feel very ashamed. In the past, after studying for 10 or 20 years, it was all about one's own liberation, never once thinking about the liberation and benefit of sentient beings. Now they're truly beginning to have a new awakening. They said, in the past, we were satisfied with our small wisdom. Now we Buddhist practitioners, through systematic study and contemplation, truly understand a bit. In the past, we didn't understand at all. Below, they give an analogy. For example, there was a person who went to the home of a friend or relative. The relative treated him very well, preparing lots of red wine, white wine, various vintages, 10-year-old, 20-year-old wulyangi, and so forth. Nowadays, many corrupt officials particularly love alcohol. In the past, they were quite accustomed to it. Now, just hearing about it, many people desperately want to drink. Because he arrived at his relative's home, they probably entertained him warmly, drinking together with him. Later, the host had some important official business, so he had to leave. When leaving, because the person was already drunk, he had a priceless treasure, a diamond or something especially precious, and sewed it into his clothing, into the guest's clothing from just now. Then, without having time to tell him, he left. After leaving, that person probably slept that night. The next morning, when he woke up, unknowingly, a very precious jewel had been sewn into his clothing. He didn't know about it. Then he went elsewhere to another country, seeking clothing and food. He worked very diligently to obtain these, encountering tremendous hardships and difficulties. Finally, he obtained a few life necessities, and he was very happy and satisfied with these. Later, his friend, the one who had suddenly left, encountered him again. When they met, he started saying to him, "You're so foolish, you're so stupid. Why? In your clothing, didn't I sew in something especially precious? In the past, for your happiness, you could have enjoyed this life yourself, enjoying all the 5 desires on such and such year, such and such month, such and such day." He probably went through a very long time, otherwise he wouldn't mention the year, would he? "On such and such date and time I gave you this. When you came on March 25th last year, I put something very good in your clothing." Nowadays, people change clothes every day, so it would have been thrown away long ago. But ancient people may have been different. Perhaps this is just an analogy, or perhaps this really happened in real life. Then he said, "In the clothing I gave you before, I sewed in something especially precious." Now, you yourself don't even know about it, constantly toiling and wandering outside for your livelihood. You're truly so foolish, so stupid. Now you can take out that jewel and go anywhere you wish. You can use it however you like, always as you wish. Whatever you think you can do, whatever you want you can do. Now this wish-fulfilling jewel has been given to you anyway, now you can use it. This way you'll have absolutely no suffering, or in other words, no poverty. At that time he told him about this matter. This story may also seem quite unrealistic, but actually perhaps they hadn't been in contact for a very long time. By the end he was probably wearing the original clothing, and in the end he may have truly obtained the jewel. Actually, some of the information from ancient people is indeed like this. Not to mention ancient people, I sometimes think, didn't I show you all a wild Agomi calendar from 1990? The day before yesterday I looked through it again. At that time, information was different from now. When we went to India, we were gone for over 6 months. We left here probably in May, then went to Nepal, to Bhutan, to India. We returned in late December, over 6 months. During those 6+ months, we had no contact whatsoever with anyone at the Buddhist Academy. When I went to America, fortunately, when we reached Hawaii, I made one phone call. When we got to Washington, I also made one call. When I went to India, during those 6+ months, there was probably no information at all from the academy. Nowadays, if people can't contact someone for even one day, they think, what happened? What happened? It's like that. At that time, we didn't feel anything unusual. I don't know how we managed it. When we returned, including my own parents at home, they also felt it was very normal. So compared to modern life, ancient people's lives were vastly different. I'm not talking about events from hundreds or thousands of years ago. Even our own lives from 10 or 20 years ago have changed incredibly fast. The world now is completely different from before. At this time, I think, regarding some ways of thinking, some of you young people, those born in the 90s and 2000s, have many ideas I can't figure out. I don't know what they're saying or what they're thinking. So much I can't see, can't hear, and can't understand what they are thinking or doing. This is also understandable. Many current lifestyles are different from our generation's lifestyles. For those before us, it's even more different. So sometimes we're still relatively fortunate. We've seen people of many different ages, including sometimes going to school, sometimes going to various places, but still there's a certain gap, a distance in our lifestyles. There's still some distance. So sometimes perhaps I also suggested to some Dharma teachers last year that sometimes we shouldn't be distracted, but sometimes we also need to understand some aspects of real life. Otherwise, if we don't know anything about real life at all, and we follow entirely the ancient way of thinking, sometimes it may be difficult to connect with people nowadays. We must definitely think about this carefully and see what would be best. So here he uses the analogy of a drunken person, but regarding Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas, it said, the Buddha is also like this. When we were bodhisattvas, he also taught us, causing us to arouse bodhicitta, but in between we forgot and became unaware. We already attained our hardship, thinking we had already attained nirvana. Such a life, such impoverished aspiration and wisdom, we felt very satisfied with it. But actually, in some of our analogies here, it seems we use someone getting drunk, for example. Can we apply this to Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas? This is also acceptable. The Lankavatara Sutra says, like one intoxicated, when the wine subsides, awakening comes. Śrāvakas are also thus. After awakening, they shall become Buddhas. Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas are also like this. Their temporary nirvana in between, after it passes, they can also become Buddhas. In the Beacon of Certainty, it's also often taught that according to the Lotus Sutra, Śrāvakas must eventually enter the Mahayana. This principle is also found here. He said, all-knowing aspiration still remains, not lost. All the wisdom and great aspiration of initially arousing bodhicitta have actually never been lost. We here are the same. We once aroused supreme bodhicitta, but in between, perhaps we sometimes lose our temper and lose many things. But actually, your aspiration has never been lost. We here are also the same. These words, I think, all-knowing aspiration still remains, not lost. Actually, in between, we may have initially aroused great Mahayana bodhicitta, then in between quarreled with Dharma friends or didn't want to practice, slept in, and the Dharma teacher had already finished teaching, but you still hadn't woken up. When you woke up, class was already over. This also happens, right? Is there anyone like this? There is, right? Who is it? Is it you? When was that? Yesterday morning when you woke up? Class was already over, but your aspiration and wisdom have not been lost. Your aroused bodhicitta is still there. It's okay. Occasionally oversleeping is fine. The Buddha has now awakened and reminded us. He also said, all bhiksus, what you have attained is not the ultimate. What you have obtained long ago, I caused you to plant these bodhi roots. Only for the sake of skillful means did I temporarily show you the nirvana of Śrāvakas, and you thought you had truly attained nirvana. Bhagavan, only now do we know, only now do we truly know that as bodhisattvas, anuttara samyak sambodhi is true enlightenment. For this reason, everyone experienced unprecedented joy. The Tathagatagarbha Sutra says, with Buddha eye, I see all sentient beings dwelling in Buddha nature. When the Buddha observes with Buddha wisdom, actually every sentient being possesses Tathagatagarbha, possesses Buddha nature. Needless to say, for Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas, even we ordinary beings possess this Buddha nature and Tathagatagarbha. At that time, Ajñata Kaundinya also restated the previous content in verse form again. He said, after we heard this unsurpassed prophecy, we were extremely joyful, unprecedented. Therefore, we prostrate before the Buddha of immeasurable wisdom. Now, before the Buddha, it's also the same as before. We confess and reproach ourselves because the treasures of immeasurable Buddhas, we didn't fully enjoy them. The treasures of immeasurable Buddhas actually refer to all these states of realizing emptiness, these Buddha treasures of emptiness, these states of emptiness. Among these, we Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas only obtained a small portion of nirvana, like people without any wisdom. We thought we were already satisfied. Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas are like this, so we must definitely, those who study Mahayana Dharma, at the very least put benefiting sentient beings first, and in the past we ourselves thought we were Buddhist practitioners, thought we were liberation seekers. This is not necessarily very good. We think we are like this, but actually we fall very far short. So starting from today, everyone should also know, sometimes people say, thinking back now, I'm very ashamed. Indeed, it is like this. For example, a poor person goes to the home of his friend or relative, as mentioned before. The relative is very wealthy and blessed, preparing delicious delicacies for him. A priceless treasure was sewn into his clothing. Finally, he quietly left. After leaving, the drunk person finally woke up. After waking up, he went elsewhere to seek food and drink. While seeking, he encountered many difficulties. Finally, obtaining a little, he was satisfied. He had no way to obtain anything better. He couldn't do so. For Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas, obtaining a little is already enough. They don't pursue Buddhahood like that. In the end, he also didn't know the jewel was in his clothing, that there was a supreme treasure. Then the relative who gave it to him, later seeing this person still so poor, I gave you so much money the other day and you're still like this. He gave him the jewel, yet he's still poor. Then he began to point it out and reproach him. How can you be so foolish? How can you have so little wisdom? In your clothing, I clearly put a very good wish-fulfilling jewel. Forget it, bring it here. Bring your tattered clothes here. I think I tied it here. Oh, I forgot. Let me see. He took it out, and indeed it was there. When the poor person saw it, wow, he was extremely joyful. He had wealth. He would enjoy it inexhaustibly for many days. Then he told the Buddha, we are also like this. The Bhagavan in past lifetimes pitied these sentient beings, and in each of us, sentient beings, especially as those 16 princes, the bodhicitta aroused in the past. Everyone is also clear about this. He caused us to plant unsurpassed aspiration and arouse bodhicitta, yet among us, Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas, some of our individual comrade leaders, also like people without wisdom, were unaware and unknowing. Obtaining a small portion of nirvana, we were satisfied with ourselves, not seeking more. Today the Buddha told Ajñata Kaundinya and others, your nirvana is not the ultimate. When attaining unsurpassed Buddhahood, unsurpassed wisdom, that is the ultimate nirvana. Ajñata Kaundinya said, today I have received a prophecy from the Buddha. The glorious moment has arrived. Successively we have also attained this, body and mind rejoicing. That's the end, right? I'm a bit dizzy today. Well, that's fine then. Let's stop here for today.
Om